Hey guys, welcome back to another Friday stream. We are live today with Quixel's very own Wiktor Öhman. I apologize if I've butchered your name. You know how us Americans do. Today, Wiktor is going to be showing us his incredible, just absolutely incredible Orgrimmar scene from World of Warcraft. I can't really say enough good things about this stream, so I'm just going to stop talking and let him take over from here.
Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. I'm really glad you like it, and I have to say thank you so much to everyone for all the kind words and the feedback. It's been overwhelming, and I'm really glad you guys like it. So, and I'm super excited to be back in this streaming chair. It's always a lot of fun, and we have a long stream today. We are going to cover a lot of different elements and techniques and tips and tricks of this scene. And I'll go over the talking points in a moment. But yeah, so we're gonna be streaming for around 2 hours, I think. There's gonna be some room at the end for Q&A. And if you have any questions during the stream, just drop the question, and Jonathan will try and interrupt me at good spaces, places, and I'll try and answer them. And if there's anything in particular you want me to talk about, just once again drop a comment in the chat, and I'll try and cover it. So yeah, I'm showing the fly through of the video here on the screen. And this is, if you didn't know, it's from Unreal Engine 4. Runs in real time. I made a video in a different kind of style than we usually do. So usually we do sort of overview breakdowns of how it was created. And for this one, I tried to do a different approach where I had more of a post-mortem sort of approach. So I talked about the things that went well, things that didn't go so well, things that were difficult and challenges that I faced. And it was really fun to make that kind of video. And based on the comments, it sounds like you guys enjoyed it as well, which is really fun to see and hear. So and in today's live stream, as I said in the video, I will be going over way more in depth, and I will try and cover as much as possible. So things I'll be covering is dithering or pixel depth blending, how I made the road leading up to the gate, banners in Marvelous Designer, how I made the trees, even though they're pretty basic, how I worked with the palisades in Maya, fog cards, how I created the cliffs on the sides, and how I made them look better with world-aligned textures, how I made the scaffolding for the gate, the wrapping, like the fabric wrapping around the what's it called, logs for the towers, etc. And I also touch on post-processing, maybe some lighting, and then there's some QA. So if there's anything I missed here that you really want me to cover, just let me know in the comments. So if we start off by jumping into Unreal, I have it open here. So we can just sort of take a look at just get an overview of how sort of big the scene is, just so you have an idea. So what I tried to do here was almost a sort of vertical slice. Like I chose this area of Duratar, and I tried to make this part look as good as possible, like a proof of concept, or like a diorama or something. So it's I saw a lot of comments of people asking me to run through the gates and into Orgrimmar. So I'm sorry to disappoint, but I did not make the entirety of the town of Orgrimmar. So it's like this is like the area of the world that I made, and it's running, as I said, in real time. There's no GI or real-time GI going on. It's just dynamic lighting. No weird, strange builds or anything. It's just 4.22 of Unreal. And using Megascans assets, both the 3D and 2D decals, 3D foliage, in combination with custom models that I made in Maya. And I'll be covering a little bit about that as well. But the thing that I got the most comments on and compliments on was how everything sort of blended together and how everything fit together so nicely. And that is something that I actually worked really hard on, and it was like the first thing that I looked into. Like how do I make things, you know, just sort of blend smoothly into each other. And the way I did that is by using pixel depth blending or dithering. It has a lot of different names. So if we take a look at, let me just grab one of these assets here, just drag it over here to the road or the path. There we go. So if I bring up the options for this one over here, let's just see if this one has the transition. Yes. So if I drag this, so we get some weird dithering going on, but if I set this to 150, you can see that it starts blending together with the terrain nicely. And Jack covered this also in the, I think it was a previous stream, right, Jonathan?
It was indeed. It was the one with him in the alley, and he did mention it was pixel depth offset with a temporal anti-aliasing blend, I believe.
Precisely. So I think he covered that quite a bit in detail. I'll cover it as well, but if you want to learn some other stuff about it, just feel free to check that out, because I'm sure he's covering some things that I'm not gonna cover. But I'm just gonna really quickly show you how it's set up. So if we open up the master material here, you can see these 3 nodes here. This is what controls the blending. And it's not a perfect solution, but it really, really does help blending stuff together. And basically what it's doing is using this dither temporal AA node, and I'm multiplying that with a transition node, I'm calling it. It's just a scalar parameter. Multiplying those two together and plugging it into the pixel depth offset. You can go a bit more advanced if you want to. I tried using this setup, but I really didn't see any major advantages of doing this. So you can see here, I just unplugged it and went back to the basic one. But it's something that's getting a lot more popular. I'm seeing a lot of people use that technique. And you can go, as advanced as you want to with that, and it's incredibly powerful. And I used it for pretty much everything, not only for the rocks like this, but also for the like the path, like the tracks or trails going down the street. So I can definitely recommend that. And let me just find a good example of it. Yeah, I guess the street here or the trails is a good one. If I just select that one, find the material, and if I turn that off, you can see, where is it? There we go. You can see how much of a difference it makes. It just ties it together so much more nicely. But as I said, it does have its drawbacks. You can see there's some flickering going on. It can look a bit strange at certain angles, so be careful with it. Use it in moderation, I would say. But yeah, that's for scenes like this, with sand and a lot of intersecting assets in snowy environments. It can be extremely handy as well. So that was the first thing. And there are a lot of really good in-depth tutorials on this online if you want to check that out. So as I said, we have a lot of things to cover. So I'm gonna try not to snow in too much into each part. So moving on to the road, which I briefly touched upon. Those of you out there with eagle eyes, you probably saw these sort of weird dots scattered across the road here. And what's going on there? If I select these two and hide them, you can sort of, there we go. You can sort of see what's happening. It's a blueprint which uses splines to, or a spline mesh that sort of extrudes along a path that I set myself. And along that path, I have a material, this track material. You can check out the material or the texture here. These are regular sand material. I think there's some nice directionality going on in there. So I used that. It worked really well. I'm just gonna show you how it works. So if I, whoops. I just have to give a shout out to Jack here, by the way, because he's the one who sent this over to me. I used similar blueprints before, but this one worked really well. So if I can just find it in browse asset, there we go. So I just sort of drag this out and assign like a track material and select this part here, hold Alt. I can drag it out and, you know, move it the way I want it. And the downside is that you can't rotate, or I just haven't figured out how you do, but so it just sort of works in 2 axes. But yeah, incredibly powerful for things like this. I think you can go this way as well. Yeah, you can. No, you can't. Well, you sort of can. There you go. So yeah, I use that for all these different paths. I have 4 different paths, like this intersection here. So what I did, if I just scroll back up, select this one, you can see I have a whole bunch of these tracks just leading, you know, everywhere. I used them down here as well. Oh yeah, this explains why I have so many. I forgot about that. I actually made a small field here outside this hut, and I used this path tool to sort of make it look, what's the word I'm looking for when you plow? Yeah, plowed field. So yeah, not the most optimized solution, but it worked. So yeah, that's how I made those, and I think it turned out really cool. You know, it really did add a lot of directionality to this path. I struggle a bit with that since I used just a tileable texture before, so it was kind of hard to, you know, without doing a lot of UV, UV work to get it sort of branch off there. So yeah, this really helped with that, and it works really well here in the highlight, I think. So if we take a look at the tracks, it's not that bad. It's not the most advanced blueprint. So I mean, if you want to know how this was made, just you know, pause your screen, take a screenshot, take a look at it. There we go. Got it? So those were the roads and the paths. Let's move on to the next part here. So do we have any questions, by the way, Jonathan, on anything that I've covered so far?
Oh, there's always questions, Victor. There's
Good, I
always
like that.
questions. One of the most pervasive questions we're having, actually 2 of them, and they're both pretty much related, is would you be so kind as to show the frame rate you're getting by hitting Control-Shift-H?
Right.
And
so
would you also be so kind as to tell us your system specifications?
Sure. So I've actually capped the frame rate because of this stream. I'm for some reason getting some. I had the same thing with the Silent Hill stream, if you guys remember. But for some reason, my computer just, you know, it just dies when I use OBS or, you know, any sort of screen sharing tool. So I've capped it to, I think, 30 or 40. Yeah, it's capped to 30, just to give. I don't know what's going on, but I'm getting, I think, 60 FPS in editor at 2560 times 1440 pixels. I'm not sure what that would be sort of in game, not in editor. I have on this computer, my computer, I have which CPU? An i9 909. What is it? 9900K is word, I think, name. I have 32 gigs of RAM, a 2080 Ti, and I'm running Unreal on a regular 7200 RPM hard drive.
A real beast of a machine, in other words.
It's a beast of a machine, yeah. So, but I mean, I think this could run on an average machine, considering the fact that, you know, I'm running it at 2560 pixels. So, and I haven't really optimized it. Like I didn't really make this with as a game level. It was more of a cinematic spec for this one. but with a little bit of optimizations, I'm pretty sure it could go up to 100 FPS, no problems at all. Especially optimizations to the lighting, I think. Lighting and the FX are probably the main performance hogs in this environment. Hope that answers the questions.
It does, and there's more.
Wonderful. Should we do another question before I move on to the banners?
This is kind of a question, but it's also not a question that would normally be asked in a live stream, but I'm just going to ask it because it's really awesome. Get Donked would like to know if you could create for them a 3440 by 1440 resolution wallpaper of this particular scene.
I have gotten a lot of requests to make wallpaper resolutions and what's it called, live wallpapers in Wallpaper Machine or something. So one of those things I can definitely do. I have really high res renders, so I can totally make a high res version, upload that. Maybe we can link it on in the video description or something. But yeah, I'll look into it, definitely. And thank you so much for wanting to have my scene as a wallpaper. That's really, really flattering. Thank you. Cool. So let's move on to the next part, because I got a lot of questions about that as well, and that is the banners. There are quite a few banners. I think there are 3 different versions of them, and the way I made them were in Marvelous Designer. So I used Marvelous Designer and just pretty much baked it down from a high to a low poly, and then I used a Megascans material on that. Used the curvature or an AO maps on that to get some more edge definition and so on. There we go. And then I just used I can't remember where I got the mask, or if I made it using filters in Photoshop or something, just to sort of get that effect of it looking like it's sort of fraying up, or what the word is in English. So we can just take a quick look in Marvelous. I'm not going to do a in-depth tutorial on how it works, but so this is the scene, and it's really nothing difficult at all. I just made a pattern. I hung it on this sort of frozen plane here. Put a stick here as the avatar to have it sort of interact with it, looking like it's actually hanging over a pole or something. And then I did a whole bunch of sort of freehand stitching on it. So I guess if we reset the 3D arrangement like that and hit space, it's gonna increase the particle distance so we don't have to wait for too long for it to render or simulate. But yeah, so there we go. It's draping, and now it's going to fall into place. Such a satisfying.
If I didn't know better, I would say that was a grocery bag.
Well, thank you. It does look like it. Yeah, you're right. So really, that's how I did. I guess I can show you just real quickly how I put it together. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and delete this, and I'll delete this, and I'll just sort of keep this avatar in place here, so we have something to work with. So I'm gonna start off by making this sort of plane that's gonna hold it in place. I'll just move it like this back here, and right click on it so that we freeze. Where is freeze? There we go. So that means when I hit simulate, it's not gonna be affected by physics or anything. And after that, I just did if I can find it, I think it's this one. No, it's this one, polygon. So I just made a shape like this, and this, just freehanding it, and something like, oops, oh no, remove the whole thing. I'll just do it real quick. So basically I'm just making a multi-sided polygon, and like so. So now we have this shape here. So I'll just move that into place and rotate it so that it's in a good spot to start simulating. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to sew these parts here to the frozen plane. So I'll just use the, I think I always mix up the, yes, this one, I think. No, this one. So I'll just select what I want to sew and what I want to sew it to. So now you can see here, we're getting these lines just indicating that it's, that they're sewn together. I'll just do the same thing on this side, like so. And now they're put together. So if we hit simulate, it's going to drape and fall into place, hopefully. Actually, I'm going to reduce the distance of the particles just so it goes a bit quicker. It's going to start draping. And there we go. So it's a really cool tool to use. I use it for a lot of my projects, you know, for banners and flags and, you know, just hanging fabric. And what I did then to get the internal lines, I just used, if I can find it, I think it's this one, internal polygon line. I just made a line like this, hit enter, and let's just do a couple more like that, and one between those two. And then what I have to do is just select the lines like so, and I just do, you know, max out the fold strength and put the fold angle to 360. And if I simulate, we're probably, hopefully, yeah, then we can start seeing the folds there. And then we can always go into the fabric and adjust the details. I think the bending weft is the one that has the most. Yeah, exactly. So this sort of makes the folds look even more pronounced. And as you can see, it's really high poly. So basically what I did when I was happy with the simulation and the way it looked, I just selected it. I made the particle distance even greater, which made it high poly, or more low poly, I mean. And I just exported that. So I exported both the high and the low poly, baked it in Toolbag, and then I assigned a material to it, just a tileable fabric material from the Megascans library. Did some shader stuff where I just sort of blended the curvature and the AO together, so I had control over the two different elements separately, and that's it really. So the difficult part there was getting, you know, the actual, you know, draping and hanging look. You know, it's a really cool tool. I remember, you know, N-cloth in Maya, and that was just a pain to work with. So yeah, and the good thing is, you know, you get a really good UV from Marvelous. So combining it with a tileable material, it's gonna give you the correct deformation of the textures as well.
Marvelous looks like such a really good tool. I've always wanted to learn it. I know some people in the chat have been asking about it too. What would you say is a good resource to start beginning at?
Oh, so the way I approach learning things is I always have something, like I always have a task. I always have a challenge that I need to, you know, a problem that I need to solve. And so, you know, I find the tool that I need to use, and then I learn it by trying to figure out how to solve the problem. And that's usually the sort of angle of attack I have on learning any program. Sort of just jumping in the deep end and learning it. But the way I learned it was actually in you know, when I made the spaceship. So if I just go here, where is it? Should be down here. There we go. So this environment here. So pretty much the entire environment is just, you know, fabrics. So like how do I make padded surfaces? So you know, YouTube videos and documentation. So I can't really give a good sort of resource where you start learning. I mean, there are just so many tutorials on it on YouTube. You know, hundreds of them. So yeah. But some good reference for it is the late and great Paul Pepera. He used it to, like, he was a master. So, you know, if you want some good resources, good something to look up to, like check out Paul Papera's stuff. It's absolutely amazing. Such an inspiration.
I miss that guy. Rip, buddy.
Yeah.
Got another question for you too. We would like to know
Mm-hmm.
what the mipmap settings are for your textures in the distance.
Oh,
Are they
that
default?
differs greatly. That differs very greatly. For some surfaces, I have set it. I've set it to sharpen, like between sharpen 4 and 10. And on some, I have turned off mip mapping altogether. Which is, you know, as I said before, one thing that can be optimized really, really quickly. It's just, you know, just for the sake of it looking sharp and crisp for the renders and everything, I just, you know, disabled mip mapping for some things. This one here, like the wall, I got some comments on, like, asking, just like you asked now, like, how do I make stuff in the distance look sharp? Yeah, if I open this back up, I just set the mip gen settings to sharpen 10, which is extreme if you think about it. But in some cases it can work really well. Like this wall, like it has this sort of lichen and this moss, so for this it worked really well. Otherwise, I would recommend not going above sharpen 4 or something like that, because it can really distort the textures. And in some cases you actually want to blur it, I've noticed. Like sometimes you get some really nice results when blurring. So do make sure to play with these settings, because different projects, different scenes have their different needs. So, you know, play around with them. I know I really wanted to have the scale read well on the wall, so that's why I went, you know, all the way sharpen 10, just to get every single possible detail from there and just having it look, you know, really high fidelity. And for some other things, I have disabled mip mapping altogether. I think I did so for these rocks. I may be wrong though. No,
I would see why you would do that, because the rocks would just become muddy at a distance where the nips become so prevalent.
Yeah, that could happen for sure. But yeah, it differs. I've set it to the MIP level that I found to be the right choice for the application. So it's hard to give a good answer to that. Just, if you're working on your own project, just analyze it, like try the different settings and see what works best. And it's actually possible to, like, if I go in here, just select the Megascans folder and I search for roughness, roughness. There we go. And if I just select a whole bunch of these, I can right click and go to asset actions and bulk edit via property matrix. I can just go in here and search for MIP, and I can set a value to a bunch of textures at the same time. So this is actually something that not a lot of people, or not everyone, knows about, and it's an extreme time saver. In a lot of projects, like I'm not really relying so much on the roughness maps for this one. I'm mainly relying on the albedo, possibly the AO normal map, and not so much the roughness, because there's not really much lighting going on. It's mainly in the shade. So what I did for a lot of these is I just selected everything bulk selected, and I reduced the resolution and changed the mip map settings for a bunch of them, which would normally take ages otherwise. So
if you did it by hand, yeah,
exactly, like one by one. So the only thing that can take time, and something that is good to keep in mind, is don't select every single map in your project, because that's gonna crash your engine, because it's reading in every single texture. So if you have hundreds, then you're gonna take the time it takes to load one map, times that with 100. So just something worth keeping in mind.
Something you might want to answer too. Our buddy Georgian Aviscaluti. I'm so sorry if I'm.
I think it's Avasilikote. I think.
Oh, good lord!
Sorry if I butchered your name as well.
So Georgian wants to know how long it took you to make this, and please accept my apologies for butchering your name again. I'm so sorry.
So I did not count. So I did, I did other stuff as well alongside this, but I think maybe 2.5 weeks of effective work, like including reference gathering and recording the videos and post processing. It's like, yeah, I think 2.5 weeks thereabouts. Yeah, I should probably do like, yeah, I should probably do some counting on that, just because a lot of people are asking me, so I should figure that out. So let's see here. So next was the tree, and the trees are, so they're never, you know, really in focus. They're always sort of on the side or in the background. So I didn't give them a lot of love. But so if I just go in here, I can open up the scene. I can check it out. So tree, there we go. I'll save this. So I'm actually kind of ashamed of this. But yeah, it's so the way I made this is I actually took, if I open up the bridge here and search for tree, yeah, I just used this tree stump here. I duplicated it and I just jammed it into itself a whole bunch of times. So this is like one tree duplicated like 4 times. So you can see 1 tree, 2 trees over there, 3 trees, and you know, it's really high poly. I used lot 0. I'm sorry. I should have conserved polys there, but yeah, that's the way I made that. Just jammed it into each other, and then then there is one thing that I actually want to talk about, that I'm not ashamed about, that I'm actually pretty proud of, and that is a technique to make the leaves look more painterly. So if we take a look here, like they look really lush and almost like painterly, because like that was the style I was going for this whole project. They look, you know, like almost like an oil painting or something. Like it's like almost abstract. You can look over here, like they look super soft and translucent, and yeah. So the way I did that, like I really struggled. Like I tried to use subsurface scattering, and like it just didn't fit the style. Like I could make them look realistic, but it didn't fit. So the way I approached it instead was I used transfer attributes. So to explain
You're a normal
this,
thief.
yeah. So to explain this in an easy way, so I have a box here, just a cube, you know, hard edges, and nothing. Like it's just I can create a new cube. Just, you know, there's nothing going on with it really. It's just run-of-the-mill cube default. And what I did then, in order to do what I did, I took a sphere and placed it on top of the leaves, or the cube in this case. And I just selected the sphere, select the cube, and I go to mesh and transfer attributes. In the options here, I just turned off everything except for vertex normals, which I set to on. And then I hit apply, hit close, and if I move the cube out of the way, you can see that it inherited the normals from the sphere. So we actually got a sphere sort of shading on this cube. So if we do the same thing, just undo that, move it back, and if I take a cylinder instead, you can actually see the result even more clearly. So just move this in a good spot and select the cube that's inside. Go to mesh, transfer attributes, hit the options and apply. So now if I delete this one, you can see that, nope, you could not. Wonder why. There we go, yeah. So now you can see that the cube actually looks like a cylinder. Very much like it did before with a cube or a sphere, but it's getting a hard edge up here. So if we put these side by side, you can see that, you know, the cylinder has a hard edge on top, just like this one, and it's sort of rounded everywhere else. So that is the way I made the, oh, that's why, because they were linked, obviously. Yeah, so if I delete that, this one sort of reverts. So I guess I have to delete the history, and then, yeah, exactly. So that's the way I did that. So if we were to sort of redo this, I'll just duplicate the canopy here, and I'll unlock the normals. So this is the way they looked, you know, before I figured this out. So I'll just go ahead and scale this up, and, you know, delete the bottom part, and I'll adjust the shape so that they're a little bit more similar. Maybe delete this bottom circle here, scale this up, and sort of fit them together. select the cylinder or sphere, select the canopy, hit mesh, edit or transfer attributes, and there we go. So now you can see that it's looking way more soft and like more painterly. So obviously you can, you should tweak this and make it a little bit more tightly fitting. But yeah, that is the way I made the canopy of the trees. Really useful, especially for like if you're going for a more painterly style like this one. So I'm gonna go back here. So now we can probably see sort of what I meant before about it being, soft and round and sort of more lush.
If you're wondering, for those of you guys who use 3D Studio Max like I do, the reason why I called Wiktor a normal thief earlier is because that's actually what the script is called, slide normal thief. And you do the exact same process.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Huh, cool. Now you know. So, do we have any questions?
Let me look through. Looks like Adnan's been handling most of them, but here's a good one. Chibisk would like to know, how do you achieve matching the color of all the textures and materials in the scene?
That is a good question. So if we go to the main view here, so I'll just go ahead and hide the lighting and go into like the unlit view here. You can see that all the colors fit together really nicely, except for the wall, which is a bit more cold in its colors. That was deliberate. So what I did first, like if you saw the video, sort of the post-mortem overview video, the thing that I sort of nailed first was the environment, and I spent a lot of time curating and finding the assets and the materials that I was going to use, and I did a lot of work on the environment before I sort of started touching on the wall. And a big part of that work was, as I mentioned previously in this stream, like figuring out like how do I get it to blend, like literally blend between the assets and the surfaces. The second part was like figuring out the palette and the like how to match them together easily and nicely. And one thing that I sort of wished that I would have done would have been to create what is called a material parameter collection, in which you can actually create scalar parameters and vector parameters to sort of tint every single material that uses that parameter. I did not plan to talk about that, but I guess I can actually do that. So if I just make a new material here, I'll call this red master. And I'll just duplicate that and call this, there we go, and call this the blue master. There we go. So actually, no, that's stupid. Never mind what they're called. So what I'll do now is I will delete this one. I will create a material parameter collection here under materials and textures. And I'll call this just param collection, just for the sake of this demonstration. If I open this up, I get nothing. I get scalar and vector, they both are empty. And if I add an element here, expand this, I get a new vector. And I can call this like tint, like global tint, and set it to be white, like so. And now we can close this down. So if I now open up the blue master, I create a parameter. So this is the blue master. Yeah. So disregard the naming. I'm just gonna do this as a quick demonstration here, and I'll just make a multiply node by holding M and clicking. And if I then take the parameter collection here, drag drop that into here, you get a new type of node here. That's called none, and that is because we have no parameter selected here. So now that I selected the global tint, which we created in the parameter collection, I can actually use that parameter in my material. So now I'm going to multiply the blue color with whatever tint I have in my parameter collection. If I pull this into base color, is that because it's a 4? Let me just see here. I'll just do a mask. Mask RGB. That should work. Yeah, there we go. Hit save. And I will do the same thing for the red master. Just copy this, open that up, paste, put that into base color. I'll just make this red, just so we have more of a visual guide here. And I'll just go ahead and place 2 cubes here in the world. Scale this up, move this to the side, and this one will get the red material, other one will get the blue material. So if I'm doing everything correct and not making a fool out of myself, they should both get multiplied with whatever value I place here. Yeah, exactly. So getting the weird color values, probably did some weird math there, but you can see. So if I would have used this technique with by using like a tint or like an overlay or something, I could probably have saved a little bit of time where I could, you know, just have a master tint on everything. But what I did is I actually just added a tint node to the master material for every single asset in the scene, which is then sort of tinted with. So that is the way I sort of blended everything together. It was, there's really not a, you know, ooh, aha answer to it. It was really just, you know, eyeing it and you know, tweaking the color values. But, you know, most of the textures work, or every single texture from the Megadance library work together with, you know, without tweaking. But, you know, for some assets, like I used some like Icelandic assets, which, you know, differ from like the volcanic assets, is, you know, just because of nature. But like I like the shapes, so, you know, I tinted the Icelandic one to fit more with the volcanic assets, and so on, vice versa. So I hope that answers the question, and I hope you learned something new here, because when I learned about parameter collections, my mind was blown. You know, I've saved hours using this, and it's really powerful. You can actually reference parameters in the parameter collections in blueprints, so you can actually, you know, drive vectors and scalar parameters and vectors from a blueprint, which is really cool. So, you know, definitely play around with that. It's a ton of fun. So I hope that answered the question.
I think you more than answered the question. Ooh.
Awesome.
You really went in depth there, which is awesome.
Awesome. So let's see what is next on the list. So the Palisades.
Wait.
Oh,
we have one more question.
One more question. Shoot.
So I know that you're not a programmer, so this might be out of your league, but some of our audience would like to know if there's a way that you could explain how to make working with blueprints a little easier for artists.
Sorry, so if I could explain blueprints to artists.
Just like a way to make it easier for like artists to work with them. Like, you know,
Right.
if you're able to work with it, then anybody should be able to, right?
Yeah, I mean, like 2 years ago, I think I had not touched blueprints at all, and I had not used Kismet, which was like the precursor of blueprints in UDK. So and 2 years ago, I actually started playing with it, and it, like, me playing around with it actually resulted in me making a game driven 100% with blueprints. So it's extremely intuitive, and it's so easy to work with. So like it started out with me figuring out how to open a door, like press F to open door. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. Can I like animate something on the door using blueprints? Yep, absolutely. So I did that, and I was like, okay, so can I have the door close after 5 seconds after stepping through the door? Can I use a volume to like open the door before I reach it? You know, it just made me my imagination just started spiraling out of control, and every single thing, like every single wonder if, or like could I, like every single one of those were like, yep, you can, and it's easy as heck as well. So uh, it is very easy. So I guess this is really better suited for another video, but I guess I can give you a super quick rundown of how it works. So what you can see here, like this is probably the easiest thing you can do with blueprints. So in the level blueprint, which you access here, I've just made a event begin play node, which really is a node that when you begin play, or when you hit play, or when the level loads, or like when the game starts, this node executes, and it executes a console command, which is tone mapper sharpen 1, which sharpens the image. It's like a post-process effect. And after it's done that, it sets the max FPS to 30. And I set this for this stream. As I said before, I had some issues with screen sharing. So whenever I hit play, I guess I can demonstrate. Like it's going to fire off. Yeah, you see it's firing from event begin play into console command and the next console command, and that's sort of visualized by these circles, going across there. It's like a flow chart. So let's say I wanted to do something else. I can do. I probably don't know the command now, but I'm trying to figure out a good way to demonstrate how it works. But yeah, event begin play, and then you can. It's really math driven. So basic math, multiply and add. You create variables that you can reference, like get set variables, and then you can multiply those variables together. And if I'm like so close to like really really going all in into explaining here, but I'm trying to restrain myself because I would love to make a stream of this, because it is useful, like not only for gameplay mechanics, but also for like if you want to make a fly through and you want something to happen like halfway through, like a door opening, for your cool portfolio render. Like if I would have make a live fly through where I fly here, and like when I pass these palisades, I get this gust of wind flying past, or something like that. Like that could be done via blueprints. It could be done via the sequencer as well, which is probably easier. But there's so many things you can do with blueprints, and the learning curve is really, really low. And there are a multitude of extremely good tutorials out there, and Epic's documentation covers it really well. They have some extremely good examples in the launcher that are for free. I think it's under the community tab. So even if you're not going to make any games, I would definitely recommend playing with it, because not only does it teach you, I mean, I actually got better at math after playing with blueprints, but it also gave me a better understanding of how Unreal Engine works, because it ties in so much with, like this is a good example, like material parameter collections. I learned about parameter collections because I needed to figure out like how do I edit this material easiest. That was and then people said on the internet, make a material parameter collection. Like, what is that? And I started reading up on that, and I learned about it. So you learn a lot about the engine. You learn, math. You learn logic. You learn, it's really like a light, programming light or scripting or something. So yeah, totally check that out. And if you guys really want me to make a video on that, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. Yeah,
I think people would love that. To just kind of echo on Victor's point there, I would say that practice is king, and the best way to learn anything and get introduced to how to work with blueprints as an artist is to learn from those who have come before. Google searches are your friend.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how many times just looking up how to Unreal on Google has saved my life on some projects I've worked on.
Yep.
Because for any question, there's almost always someone who's asked it before. Mm-hmm. And it's always easier to learn from those who came before you.
Yeah, that is something that surprises me every single day. Like how, like this question that I have is so specific and so niche. Like, how come someone else has already had this question? But you know, I've yet to run into a question that someone else hasn't answered or asked before. So let's see here. All right, so I guess I'll move on to the next point, which is the palisades, like these sort of spiky things and the fences and stuff. So this was actually something that this is a technique that I sometimes use, which I find to be really powerful. And you know, it's one of those things that sort of make it from, you know, take a render from like 98% to 100%. So if we take a look, I'm trying to figure out a good way to demonstrate this. So if I just make this smaller and take a look here. So if I go into this view and just try, there we go. And I'll check out the, where is it? So actually, let's just take a look here. So if you see look here on these palisades, like they're all they are is, you know, LOD5 or something of the palisades. Let's see, what is the palisade, I think is called. There we go. Yeah. So like LOD5 of these, I put them together in Maya. You know, I assembled them in the way that I, you know, in the configuration that I liked. And that worked nicely, except the fact that they looked a bit floaty, so to speak. So I'll just open up this material, see if I can find AO here. Yep, there it is. So if I just make this smaller so you guys can see what I'm doing. And if I just sort of bypass this AO map that is here and hit save, you're gonna see what I mean probably. Did it load? There we go. So yeah, it's looking a bit floaty and a bit disconnected. So if we just plug this back in, you can see the difference now that we're sort of in fully shaded mode. There we go. So that was a thing that I did. That was extremely, like a very, very, very basic thing that yielded a really big result or big difference. So the way I did that was actually very, very simple. So actually, let me start off by sort of presenting you with a problem that I had. So seeing as I used these assets that all of them have their own UVs. And I'm not just using one of them. Like there's overlapping in the UVs. Let me open up the UV editor for you guys. There we go. So you can see there's a lot of overlapping. This one probably is overlaying. Yeah, exactly. I have a couple of versions of that one. So what I needed to do was I needed to have unique UVs for every single island here. So basically what I did is I duplicated or copied the UVs into a new UV set and just did an automatic layout so that they all got their own space. And then here's like the a bit cumbersome part. So what I had to do is I had to make this new unique UV into UV set 1 or 0, if you will. And I had to take the actual UV set that I used in Unreal to be the secondary UV set. And then I baked that down. Like I just baked from itself to itself in Toolbag, which gave me the AO. And then I just flipped the UVs back to their correct sets, 0 and 1. And in the UV editor or in the material editor, I just set the UV coordinate to be 1. Because the first UV set is 0 in Unreal and the second is 1. So yeah, I just set this AO map to be using the second UV set. I'm aware that this might sound a little bit confusing, but I hope that makes sense. So yeah, basically I just made 2 UV sets. I baked the mesh that I made from itself to itself, which gave me like a global AO. Which gave it more of a it makes it look more settled and sort of coherent and sort of connected to itself. I think it made a huge difference, and it's something that I use quite often actually. It's something that I like if I had like this really big asset and I want this asset. Like let's say I wanted to use this wall for example. Like I could actually like take all these meshes, sort of combine them together, and have create a secondary UV for them. Make an AO map for it. Use a secondary UV and apply that. So I got this big, nice, chunky, pre-baked AO map for this whole wall. If I wanted to, like if I want to take this to an extreme. Very very useful. It can be used for for masking materials. Just light masked and stuff like that. It's a nice, very basic tip that I like to use. Did that make sense, Jonathan, or should I cover it in a different angle?
I think it makes most of the sense that we needed to make it.
Cool.
But we are getting to the midway point between this stream, so we have a couple of more questions that people would like to know the answer to. Now, you would fancy yourself as kind of a mixer expert, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So Jose Lopez would like to know, is it easy to create tileable mixers materials?
Absolutely. I mean, that is like, it's one of the core things in Mixer. It, automatically tiles everything you do. Like, even if you freehand paint on your surface, it is going to automatically tile that for you. So if you paint over the border or the edge of the document, is gonna loop over to the other side. As long as you use a material that is tiling, like all the Megascan surfaces are, it's going to automatically tile regardless of how much you offset or rotate it or and stuff like that. So yes, I would say it's very very easy, seeing as that is sort of one of the core things of the Mixer, authoring materials.
That's been my experience with it so far too, but it's always nice to explain that and give people the insight that we have into it.
Yeah, for sure.
John G would like to know, can Wiktor zoom into the wall?
So the wall, yeah, it's not the most good looking wall up close. Like, I really made this to be sort of like a backdrop or like a diorama for like a cinematic scenario. But yeah, like this is like the way it looks up close. So the thing is, I worked with this as you would for like a movie shot. Like, say, okay, so I have like these angles that I really want to look good. So certain elements, like, I really exaggerated both in terms of color and in shape and everything, just to make sure it looks as good as possible from those angles. But yeah, it's if I would have made a shot really close up, I would have put a lot more effort into certain parts. Like, one thing that I mentioned in the video that was really giving me a hard time was the scale. And like, one thing that really helped me with that was making these scaffolds, which fortunately made a lot of sense for me, since I wanted to tell the story of this being very recently built, like Orgrimmar 1.0. They just they're still building the wall. It hadn't been torn down by Deathwing, it hasn't been rebuilt or anything. So like, having these sort of small details across the wall just made it, like, first of all, I think it looks really cool, and secondly, it makes a lot of sense from a storytelling mode, and thirdly, it just sells the scale so much better, because we all know how big a plank is. I made them a little bit bigger than they would be in real life, just so that they would actually read well from the distance, so that otherwise I'm afraid it would have just looked like noise, really. So yeah, that's I guess I went into a bit of a tangent there, but yeah, I hope that answers the question there. All right, yeah. It wasn't really a question; it was just a request to show the wall more closely.
Yes.
Yeah. So
we do have
that is the story of the wall.
Story of the Wall.
Yeah.
Fantastic story, too.
Thank you.
Uragon YT would like to know if you could show the top view and full rotation around your entire scene.
Sure. So as I said before, it's more of a diorama. It's like a vertical slice of this area. So if we take a look like top down, you can see that, you know, it's this area in front of the wall and the wall itself. And then there's a little bit of like interior, like to make it look like there is actually buildings behind the wall as well. So it's really like a movie set, if you will. A 360. We look behind us. Now we see something. Now we don't. See something? Now we don't. Yeah, there's nothing behind me. It's just an illusion. No, but it's as I said, like this is a like this was made with a, you know, cinematics in mind. You know, I had these shots you know, determined before I even went into this. Like I wanted, you know, focus on like this road. I want to focus on the wall. I wanted to focus on like more of the environment. Like I had these shots in mind. Like, you know, it's almost like I had this, you know, imaginary movie, like this imaginary scene from a movie, or, you know, in mind when I made this. So like that is, yeah, that is why there is nothing behind me, because the scene doesn't take place behind me.
And it's good to mention too that this is actually a pretty common technique for even for video games. Like there's really no reason to render anything that you can't see, and especially if you're just creating an environment that has a very specific focal point and a very specific set of, you know, things that you want to show off. Going through the extra effort of creating an entire world would probably have made this project take, I don't know, like 4, 5 times longer. Do you think?
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, for the purposes I made this, yeah, I mean, I never intended to show like the canyon behind me. I never intended to show the, you know, the what's it called, Zeppelin tower to the right there. Like I wanted to tell a story around this area. Like I wanted to tell the story of Duratar and the Gates of Orgrimmar, you know, at the point of its construction. So yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic stuff. So we're getting more questions, and it's getting difficult to keep up with them sometimes. But we would like to know about the rope blueprint. What can you discuss about that?
The road blueprint.
Rope, like the
Oh, the
ropes.
rope blueprint.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So that is actually a very. That was more of a quality of life thing. So, in case you didn't know, there is a cable actor in Engine. That is, I use that for pretty much all my projects. Like it's, you know, be it electric wires, be it, you know, cables for a wall like this. But, you know, the way this works is like you drop it into the world. You just get a better view on it, and then you change the end location. You can drag this value up, and it's going to be longer or shorter. You can change the length of it, but you know, it's having it reach a specific part of the world using XYZ values is a bit tricky, in my opinion. Like I'm sure someone in the comments is gonna go like, hey, but why don't you just do? Yeah, because I didn't know. I'm not sure if there is a way to do it otherwise. So yeah, what I did was I just made a blueprint. Like if someone tells me there is a way to do this without making a custom blueprint, I'm gonna feel so stupid. So let's hope that is not the case. So yeah, basically what I did was I made a blueprint which has an end location, pretty much. So yeah, it's just going bananas here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna make this a bit. Let's see here, minus 2. No, let me just find a good value here. Whoa, there we go. All right, so let's make it a bit longer. Yeah, so basically, I'm not sure what's going on with the length there, but yeah, basically what I did was I made an endpoint of the like the endpoint actually adjustable in the world in 3D space, instead of actually adjusting the endpoint via the XYZ sliders or inputs. So now I can just take this endpoint and place it wherever I want, like so. Just makes it a lot easier. It's going absolute bonkers for some reason. I don't know why. So yeah, you can just I can just take this gizmo, move it up a bit. Way easier than sort of the run-of-the-mill kill component. And if we take a look at it, like, it's really nothing special. I just take the location of the cable. I get the world location of I just calculate the distance from the start and end point. Then I can set the cable length using this length bias here, and I set the cable the width here. So yeah, it's not really much to say. I mean, if you want to use this, just take a screenshot, recreate it. I'm pretty sure, like, I just made this really quickly, so I'm sure there are a bunch of errors in it. But yeah, if you do find any errors, please let me know, and I can improve my own. So that's the way that works. Nothing really exciting. It was just, as I said, a quality of life thing that I did, because there's a whole bunch of wires, and I just didn't see myself punching in the XYZ values for each and every one of them.
Or worse yet, having to model the drooping yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You've been around for a while. You played Half-Life 2, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Do you remember when the Source engine was like the first new thing, and Valve made a very big point about how the cable physics were like the best thing ever?
Yes.
Every time I look at cable physics, I cannot think of anything but Half-Life 2.
I mean, it was a very physics heavy engine. I mean, they did some groundbreaking stuff. I think I lost you there, Jonathan, or are you still with me?
Oh, I muted myself because I didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh, no.
We have been getting repeated requests to move on to a discussion involving lighting and post-processing. So
okay, yeah, that is, I did plan to do that a bit later, but since we're a bit past the halfway mark and we are going to have a more of an extensive QA session at the end, about 15 minutes before, I guess I could... Let me just see here. So what I want to talk about are the fog cards, creating the cliffs, and the world aligned textures for them, scaffolding, and the wrapping. So I guess we can skip talking about the scaffolding because it's really nothing special. You sort of got a glimpse of them here in Maya before. New construction here, so don't save. So really what I did for them was I just made these like modules using the lowest LOD for the planks. Here you can just search for planks. I use these for every single project. Oops. Yeah, we have like 3D planks that I used here. So I made a couple modules and then I placed them in engine where I wanted them. So I guess just cover that real quick so we can skip that part later. And so what I really do want to talk about, that I promised to talk about in the video, I'm a man of my word, so I'm gonna cover that, and that is the world aligned texture for the cliffs. So as I mentioned in the video, the way I made these cliffs is really, really simple. Like, I made a super basic blockout for the entire world, and I just took these cliffs, 3D assets from the library, and I placed them on top of the blockout. So let me just go in here, minimize that, so you can see just sort of covering up the blockout there. And if we take a look at the material for one of them and scroll down a bit to the WA tiling, so world aligned tiling. If I adjust this B value here, you can sort of see this stretching going on. Like there is this texture. Actually, if I choose the other asset here instead, let's hope it's not crashing here. No, there we go. Good engine. There we go. Choose that one instead. Scroll back down and adjust the tiling. We can sort of see how everything connects. So you can see this one here and this one here. Like these are separate assets, but the actual texture between them aligns like magic. And the reason why it's doing that is because I've actually created a world aligned text. Like I have a world aligned material within a material. So if you take a look here, if I can find it, world, here we go. So I have world aligned texture, a node for the albedo, normal, and roughness. And there's really not much to cover here, because you know the node is in engine. Like you don't need to make a custom node or learn anything. Like you really just right click, search for world aligned texture, hit enter, and here you go. So the only thing you need to do is you need to create a 3 vector or a vector parameter, plug that into texture size, and this size is sorry if I'm mixing up the terms here, but like it's global, it's world space scale instead of sort of local. So you have to set pretty high values for these, and I just use that vector to control all of these at the same time, so that the albedo and the normal and the roughness all get the same value, so that they don't sort of get offset from each other. Then I plug in the XYZ texture and use that and sort of lerp that with the base color, or like the sort of the base albedo. So if we go back into the material instance here, I can actually control the blend of the world aligned texture. So if I increase this, it sort of goes back into the sort of default, and it looks so cool when you blend like that. So like if I set it to like 0, we're only gonna get the world aligned texture visible. If I set it to 0.5, we're gonna get 0.5 or 50% blend between the two. So like I think I set it like 0.2 or something like that to get some of the original texture information and most of the blended texture. So yeah, I mean really what it does, it does an XYZ projection in world space. So like if we go back here, I can sort of just take this one, pull this out. There we go. And if I like rotate this, like it's going to stay aligned. You know, like the lines here, like sedimentary lines, they're gonna stay what's it called, horizontal, regardless of how I rotate this. So really powerful, and you can make some really cool stuff with it. I mean, you can even combine this with blending the pixel depth offset blend to blend them even more together. So it's really powerful, and for pretty much anything that is large scale, I tend to use that technique, even if it's just subtle, just to get some big shapes that just span across the entire world. So do we have any questions on this blending, by the way?
Not yet, but we do have a question from earlier that I would like to have you answer if you can find the time. One of the users would like to know, if you wanted to fit this into a game setting, what would be the steps that you would take to achieve it?
I'm guessing he's asking more about optimization and stuff like that.
That would be my guess.
Yeah. So I would decrease the view distance of like the foliage, which is really big. I would also probably use a lower LOD of the foliage. I would definitely use less sort of fill lights and reduce the cascades and shadow resolution, all that kind of, like I really like every single feature that I'm using. Like I'm just using it to 11. Like I'm just pulling it all the way, SSAO like nuts and like crazy high, DFAO, distance field AO, like everything that is available. I'm just using it as I just cranked it up all the way up quality wise and stuff. I also probably would use mainly up to 2K instead of the 4K texture resolution that I'm sometimes using. I'm not so concerned about the triangle count, because Unreal just handles that like a champ. Like it just munches triangles, like cereal. The main things are, yeah, effects would be another thing, like the particles. Like they're getting churned out pretty hard. Like there are a lot of particles, and they're, you know, volumetric, and the fog is volumetric. Like, yeah, there are a lot of things that could be taken down pretty far without having a too much of an impact on the visual quality, I think. So those would be the things that I would address first. I would not. Yeah, I mean, I think there are a whole bunch of things that I could do to retain the visual quality. Maybe like 85% remaining. Yeah. Draw distances, fewer particles, fewer fill lights, reduce the quality of the the distance of the distance field AO and SSAO, things like that, probably.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that's a really good way to put it. I think that's going to make people happy to know exactly how to go about trying to optimize this stuff. And from my own personal perspective, because I do actually work on a game currently on my side, you know, spare time, optimization is a tough challenge, even for seasoned teams. So
it's fun though.
It is fun, but there is no one size fits all. Every project is different. Every way you build is different.
For sure.
Really, it all comes down to using your GPU profiler and figuring out where you need to cut corners.
Yes.
So that being said, we are getting so many requests for your lighting and post-processing. Can we move on to that?
Sure. Yes, we can do that. So the lighting, I covered this a little bit in the video, and the sort of overview, and it is actually a very basic setup. Like the base lighting is very basic. So as you can see here, like I have a light source, like the directional light, and I have a skylight. And like, so if we turn off the fill lights, so I have a whole bunch of fill lights for this one. So if you turn them off, you can see sort of what the lighting is at its, you know, core. And if I turn off the light source here, you can see the sort of ambient lighting. So like these two were the two things that I nailed first. Having a good sort of ambient lighting intensity, and having the light from the sun being in a good spot. So I get some, you know, light flooding out of the gate. Initially it was a little bit more because the gate was a bit more open in development. But what I wanted was to have it sort of touching here on this part of the map, which I'm getting now. So once I had that, you know, I started adding in like the gate fill. Like I wanted some bounce light on the gate. I wanted some, let's see if I have so many lights here, as you can see. There we go. Like I wanted some more highlights down here. I'm gonna toggle through them all. You know, I just started light painting, you know. This is also something, as I said before, like I would reduce the amount of lights in the scene. Like I treated this like a painting, as I said. Like I just, you know, went all out on the light painting and the sort of fake GI and stuff like that. So what I would have done here, instead of having all these sort of point lights on the wall, I would just probably have one rectangular light sort of bouncing it. Like this is a luxury that you have when working with more cinematic style projects. Like you can really, go absolutely nuts with things like this. So yeah, if we turn this back off again, you can see like some things that I did early on were the like rim lights on the towers here. Like they sort of got a bit lost, like they were pretty dark. So I sort of just added rim light to the what's it called, the roofs. That was a one thing. The second thing I did was adding this really strong light behind the wall, making it look like, you know, something is brewing behind there. You know, these orcs are up to no good. Like there something's brewing back there. So basically what I did there was, if I can find it, excuse me while I really should have named these, I'm sorry guys, But now
I take offense to that.
at least now you're getting to see what each of the lights do. So here we have one. Here we have one. I think I did one more. That was like the main sort of orc light. There we go. If I turn these off, yeah, there we go. Like this was a big thing. Like this, other than the rim lights for the towers, like this was the other thing I started doing. As you can see here, this spotlight 2. This is, I think, was causing most of like the spill light coming out of here. And I've set these to be volumetric, and I set the scattering intensity to 4, which is quite high. So I set this to like 1. Like we're losing that drama, you know. It's like we really need that volumetric sort of, you know, that sort of bloom, volumetric bloom you're getting from the fog there. So if I set it back to 4, there we go. I guess I can put it even higher, you know, really crazy. But yeah, I mean, as I said in the video, like I started out like this, and like, you know, cranked it up to 11, and then I just sort of started dialing it back, you know, 8, 7, 5. There we go. Finding that nice middle ground. I talked a lot about that in the video as well. You know, when it comes to pretty much everything, especially when you do slightly stylized stuff, and even realistic things to a degree, is like really just take whatever you're doing and just turn it all the way. Like the scale of something, or like the what's it called, the silhouette of something, like really just exaggerate it and then sort of dial it back. I did that with the lighting. Like the lighting was extreme at first. Like on this side of the mountains here, like the lighting is barely noticeable, but it is a bit colder than it is on the right side. But like I dialed it back so much that it's barely noticeable. Like at first it was really, it was almost blue and it was almost red over here, but there, you know, it was sort of dialed back. And like the fact that I did that allowed, you know, people to, you know, bring it up. So Dan, absolutely fantastic artist I'm working with, he brought that up, like, hey, so, you know, that's cool, but it doesn't make any sense. Like, it's way too extreme. Like, that side can be blue, that side can't be red. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, from I guess from a theoretical point of view, I guess it makes sense. You know, right being red, warm, and left being cold. You know, foreground and background being cold and warm and stuff like that. Like, I guess it sort of made sense, but not from a physical point of view. So yeah, I mean, just the fact that I had turned it up to 11, you know, enabled him to actually, you know, notice it and actually sort of telling me to dial it back. So yeah, this was a really big thing, and it was these lights are sort of what makes the entire scene. I guess we can sort of select everything except, was it like these, hide them. Like, this still looks really cool in my opinion. Like this almost looks cooler if you want this kind of lighting. But like this, the base lighting, the rim lighting, and like this sort of Doom, sort of Mordor looking lighting, like these were the first thing that I nailed. Like, this was the composition that I had nailed pretty early on, because I knew I wanted to have that backlight in from the concept, and I knew I wanted light spilling out. Like everyone at work, I told about, you know, like I showed this, were like, oh dude, you have to make this, or, you know, Mordor looking orc thing with, like, there is war brewing, war drums, and there's, like, you know, blacksmiths, you know, hammering iron and stuff. Like, yeah, so I mean, yeah, I had to do that. And the rest of these lights are really just me, you know, going absolutely nuts with fill lights and light painting. Like, these are not necessary really. It's just a way of, you know, evening out the light and, you know, softening up the image. And it's, these lights are really what helped me achieve that sort of painterly and Renaissance painting look, which is something that I really wanted to go for. Should I go like way more in detail, or like?
Well, we are starting to run out of time. We only have about 5 minutes left. I wanted to bring up two important points. Number one, the Horde are the good guys, so I take offense to you calling the Arcs or the Orcs out for doing evil things in the background. They're clearly the freedom fighters here.
Yeah, I mean
Two,
they are sort of refugees from
right,
evil
they
wizard.
are. But
Yeah.
that's not the point I'm trying to make next. Number two, the most important point is that PBR, like any system you use in computer graphics, is not a strict set of rules. PBR is a guideline, and obviously, because of the way you've set up these lights and even the materials themselves, it just shows that PBR is only a system to work in that you can easily break anytime you want to create any kind of look that you really want to make. It's
Yeah.
more about streamlining the art process than it is about stringently following. You can only do this amount of number on the light, or you can only go so far on this or that. It all comes down to what looks good. And let me
Yeah.
tell you, this scene looks incredible.
Thanks, man.
Okay, I don't care if the values are physically accurate or not. Does it really matter in the end if it looks good? Not really.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. I guess that is so pretty much everything I make has like when I say stylized, I'm not talking about World of Warcraft stylized. I'm talking about it has a touch of stylization, and I think that is because pretty much everything I do has its values tweaked. So if you want to make something that is entirely photorealistic, like yeah, sure. I mean, go for the exact luminous values of the sun and everything like that. But like I always prefer stuff that is a bit larger than life. Like the sun is a little bit brighter, the mist is a little bit mistier, the vibrance is a little bit more, colors a bit more vibrant than they really should be. So that is just like something that I like to do, and I guess that is why like my stuff feels a bit more stylized. Maybe. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for tweaking values, a bit beyond their sort of scientifically correct values. Just like you said, Jonathan.
Yeah, man. So just a quick shout out to Cordell Felix, who's in chat. But
Hey, how's it going?
yeah, he said hi to you too. We have a couple other questions we need to cover.
Yep.
That being number one, why did you make the choice to use stationary meshes instead of movable? What would be the benefit of that? And I think we covered it a little bit, but just in case, maybe we could cover that light coming through the door. I'm pretty sure it's a spotlight,
Yep.
but just in case. And then we should move on to color grading after that.
So you're putting me on the spot here. Like I have no idea why I put them to stationary. I just drag and drop them from the content browser. Just put them to whatever they were.
Hey, if you didn't want to be on the spot, you shouldn't have signed up for the stream.
Yeah, I mean honestly, like they could have been any like movable, stationary. I don't know. Like I did not really set them to be anything. Like the only thing. I don't know. I honestly don't know why I set the stationary. I'm sorry for the bad answer. Yeah, I mean it's
Sometimes that's just how it is.
it's just how it is. I mean, it doesn't really. It could be either. I mean, you can see I'm scrubbing through here. They look the same.
Well, it's not even just an issue of looks. There are issues that come from using different types of meshes too.
Yeah, performance. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, performance, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too much into depth to it because I don't even know if I'll finish this project, but I've been working on a recreation of Deus Ex and Hell's Kitchen, the first Deus Ex, not the rest of them. And I only had some basic tile meshes set up, like 2x2 meter meshes, and I made prefabs out of them using blueprints. And I didn't realize that when you convert them, like a static mesh actor, into a blueprint from the viewport, it actually turns it into a movable mesh. And when you put enough of those around your scene, even with a good computer, it will run terribly. Static meshes are always the best way to go for performance.
Yep, for sure. Look at
So
that.
we're getting a lot of requests for your post-processing settings, so I think we should cover that as soon as we can.
So the post-process settings, so what I did here, I actually don't have a post-process volume, but what I do have is a cinematic camera in which I am right now. So I'm just piloting a cinematic camera, and I'm just adjusting the post-process settings within the camera itself. So for the fly-through, I use slightly different post-process settings for the different angles. So I have 2 cameras here. So I think the grading settings and the post-process settings are pretty logically laid out. So, going from top to bottom. So that's really the way I approach adjusting the grading. First I adjust the white balance. I dropped it down a little bit from, I think, 6500 is the default, and I set it to 5900 just to make it a little bit colder. So I'm thinking here sort of what angle I should approach this from. So there are 2 parts to the post-processing, I guess. One being grading, one being the actual post-process features like bloom and stuff like that. So I guess we can start with the rendering features here. The first thing that I adjusted for the post-process was the ambient occlusion, and I did some tweaking back and forth throughout production as I got more, it got more and more high fidelity. So if we take a look at the detail lighting here, by the way, I absolutely love going into detail lighting. If I set the intensity to 0, you can see what a difference the SSAO makes in the scene. And I think the radius, what is the default? Is it 25? No, 200. Yeah, the default radius for this is 200, and I set it down to 9. I really wanted the SSAO to be tight, and I used the DFAO, or distance field AO, for more of the bigger, broader, more global sort of AO. So I just dragged this all the way down to really make these small details on the the scaffolding on the wall. I really wanted that to stand out, and I wanted the small AO, SSAO for the wrapping and between the palisade and stuff. So you can see just what a difference a day makes. What a difference it makes. There we go. So that was the first thing. So and I think I said it 25 or something when I started working on the wall. And as I got more and more small details, I reduced the radius as well. And there are a lot of parameters you can adjust here that when I started out in Unreal, I didn't even look 2 times on it. Things like the fade out distance, and so if I set this to be, what is the default? Yeah, the AO doesn't even reach to the wall. So if I set it back to 20,000, now it's reaching all the way. So that is this is the default. So I'm just getting some AO here and not all the way. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. The radius, the power, the contrast of the SSAO, you can really go crazy with that.
I want to just chime in real quick too with DFAO. It is such a lifesaver for foliage. I imagine making personal scenes without it. If you guys saw that Hall of Oaks scene that I made, it would not look anywhere near as cool without DFAO. It does so much to bring foliage together. It's hard to even put into words. You just have to see it in real time to understand.
It is amazing. It is. I mean, especially for bigger scenes, it's so good. It takes a little bit of getting into, both how to set it up and sort of you sort of need to adjust your workflow, at least in my experience, I might be wrong, it might have changed, but sort of keeping meshes split up just so you don't have things that are too big and just huge chunks of stuff, because that can sort of break the DFAO. But as long as you work in a DFAO friendly way, it looks absolutely fantastic, and it can be used in so many ways. You can actually use it to sort of mask your materials. I haven't used that extensively, but sometimes I used it to sort of get rust in crevices in the materials and stuff like that. And I think it's called DFAO masking or something, or AO masking, something like that. So definitely check that out. And using SSAO and DFAO in conjunction or in combination is so cool. So
I
yeah.
don't remember you actually covered it, but instead of the skylight setting, you can also get a little bit more control over whether the DFAO multiplies over the existing SSAO,
Yeah.
or whether it just kind of goes for the minimum value that's between the two. So if you really want that super darkness that you just might not be able to get otherwise, you got to hit that multiply button.
Yep. This one, right? Yeah. There's a small difference here, but yeah.
Scene is so freaking cool. I want to just drop all the swear words, but I can't. We're on stream. It's so phenomenal that you did this and all in real time, and it runs so well.
Yeah.
It's
really so here it comes. I actually adjusted. I'm glad you actually brought up the skylight, because I actually adjusted the DFAO tint to be more brown. So like by default, it sort of looks like this, and setting it to be a brown color just also helps to bring everything together a bit more. So I'm not sure how well you can see that in the stream, but like if I just make it black, it separates things more, which can be nice, but that was not the style that I was going for with this project. I wanted that sort of painterly and like having everything just sort of blend together more nicely. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That is a feature and that is a parameter you should definitely play with. So do check that out for your project. There are some really good guides. Like I cannot stress this enough. Like Epic made such a good job with the documentation for Unreal Engine. Like I've learned, like pretty much everything I learned about that engine is from there. So go to the I think it's docs.unreal engine or something. Just search for whatever question you have about Unreal, and you're gonna get the documentation.
Yeah, Epic is really good about that, and that is one of the main reasons why I've been using Unreal since the UDK days. I mean, I've got over 10 years of experience with Unreal at this point, and I can't think of any other tool that I would rather render my scenes in, or even just work in general.
It's like any question you have is either answered in the documentation or their answers website, like their forums or like their wiki. Support page. It's so good.
We do have another question too that I should, I hate to cut you off there, but we do need to wrap this up soon because we only have about 20 minutes left.
Yep.
We have a user wanting to know about the terrain. How did you do it? Did you use tessellation, vertex painting? What techniques did you use?
Yes.
And how comfortable are you talking about them?
So I will not have time to cover every like in detail, but what I did is if I go into Maya, I will just bring up the blockout 4. Don't save. So also the terrain itself and the mountains they're just static meshes. They started out as blockouts, like really basic stuff. It was basically just a plane with, I mean, it's still very basic to be honest, but I mean it was pretty much just a plane initially, that I placed like a wall, like a square wall or something, and then these really basic cliffs. So what I did was I started sculpting in Maya using just regular sculpt tools to sort of find like where I wanted the paths to go and stuff like that. And then I just retopologized so I could get some nice UV mapping and greater control over the sort of the high elevation differences and so on. So that is the way. That is the reason why it looks the way it does. I just wanted to have great control, and for scenes like these and environments like these that are somewhat limited in scope and size and scale, I actually prefer this approach rather than using the terrain tool. I mean, the terrain tool is awesome, don't get me wrong, but I just feel I have greater control doing this. I can UV map and I can manipulate the UVs in a different way than I can using the terrain tool. I can also, it's, if I wanted to, I could like grab this and sort of have this hanging over. I didn't, but I could, and that is not possible with the terrain tool. So yeah, it's a static mesh. And then what I did, seeing as this is so incredibly basic, what I did was I used a whole bunch of Megascan's assets, like assemblies and like cliff meshes and stuff. and I just ram them into the side of the road. So this one here, for example, I use this extensively. Like a sort of mudslidey looking, not mudslide, but it has this nice directionality going on in it, and I'm sort of lining the entire road with that. And I have these sort of sandstony meshes that I also rammed in there, because I really wanted to look like this is a road, and like I wanted to separate it a lot from the rest, and I almost wanted to look like these hardworking orcs have been digging out this area. Like, hey, I want this part to be my orchard or whatever. Like, I don't know, cacti orchard. Like here, like I wanted to have this sort of carved out look. Like orcs are hardy people, and like they don't care if it's rock or sand or soil. Like it's chiseled, hard, defined path. Going through Durotar. So that was the style I was going for, and I think using this approach would look way better than it would have done if I just would have had this sort of smooth path going through.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. The way you set that up in Maya and then brought it out, I need to come around to the way you think on this. So I can save myself so much time by not using the Unreal terrain editor the way that I currently use it, which is kind of like trying to sculpt out details, whereas I could just use it as more of a base mesh, which is what you did.
Yeah.
And I often find myself caught in the trap of where I'm trying to get as many polygons into it as possible, when really all I need to do is let the Megascans assemblies do a lot of the work for me.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I don't think this is more than like 2,000 triangles or something. It's extremely bare bones. And as you say, the assets themselves, like the skirts and the assemblies and the cliffs, like I just jam them in. Like whenever I see, like for example here, like if I were to turn the camera around here, like this doesn't look very cool, but like then I can just grab a couple of these assets, like rotate them around, just jam them into the ground, and it already starting to look better. So that is the way I worked a lot with the terrain. Like that, it's a lot of fun, and especially with the whole pixel depth blending, everything just blends together so much more nicely. Let's see here. I'll take this and set it up to 150. Just look at that. I can take this and duplicate that. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna set dress this entire part, but this is the way I did it. And I have, like, if you look through my content browser there, like you see I have a whole lot of different assets, and you're thinking, wow, that that's a crazy amount of assets. But really, what after a couple of days of working and setting up the environment, like I found a couple of assets that did most of the work. Like I found like a handful of assets of all of these that went, they just became my go-to assets. Like I showed you before, I had this really defined asset cliff, volcanic or sandstone thing. I have this just assembly that I showed before. I have like 2 of those, and like those 3 or 4 assets, they did most of the work. So yeah, I might have like 20 3D assets, but I probably used like 5 of them. Just rescaling, rotating them, using them in combination with each other. Like you come such a long way with that. So yeah, that is really the way I worked with the terrain, and then in combination with these paths, like this path blueprint that I got from Jack, combining that with trees, and I guess this is a really high level thing, but like if you bring in a 3D asset and you start placing it out, like you have to think in large scale, medium scale, small scale, extremely fine scale when you're working with stuff like this, because otherwise it's gonna look unnatural. Like you can, if you look on my scene here, you have these big sandstone cliffs leading down to like these medium sandstone leading down to smaller sandstones leading down to these chunks of rocks, and then you have like even smaller. Like you need to have the entire spectrum of scale. Otherwise, it's just gonna look unnatural. I mean, gradients, fall offs. Like think in terms of that. So if you only have small stuff, it's gonna look weird. If you only have big stuff, it's gonna look weird. Like you need the entire thing. So using, yeah, I'm actually using one asset as both large, medium, and small scale. So that just sort of goes to show that if you just work with materials and blending and world aligned textures and stuff, you can come a really long way from just using a couple of assets like that. So, oh geez, we're coming in close now. So was there another question there that I missed, or did I sort of miss something in regards to the terrain there?
Oh, there's always questions, Victor. You know this.
I love questions. Just keep them coming.
Okay. Steadfast Patriot wants to know, are the orcs really happy living in this dirty of an environment? I would say yes.
I would say yes. I mean, have you seen where they came from? Like what was his name? Gul'dan? Like, did you see what he did with their planet?
He only destroyed it, right?
Yeah, he destroyed it. Like, made it all green and dead. So yeah, I would say, like, even if they only have some semi-dead trees, I would say they're very happy here. And if you take a look in Orgrimmar in game, you'll see they're very happy. They have pools and they have palm trees, and they're happy. They're happy campers.
Oh yeah. So we have another question. Tony Dorotic wants to know, I have recently started doing trees, and when I'm in Unreal, the leaves are not visible from a distance, only when I get close. Any tip on how I can solve that? Thank you.
Yeah, so that could be a number of reasons. One could be the mipmap settings for the opacity map for the leaves, if you're using texture-based leaves instead of mesh-based. So that could be one thing. Another thing could be the quality settings for the engine. You can scale that to all the way up to cinematic or epic, I think. So check that out. If it is the mipmap settings, you could try setting it to a different mip mode, or you could try turning off the mip mapping altogether. Like, I've noticed in many cases, if I turn mip mapping off altogether, I actually get a really nice and crisp result, but it can be a little bit, almost flickery, because it doesn't fade out in the same way. Like, you're getting this really, really defined result in the passive map. So I mean, I think that is the case. If it maybe it could be, if it's just the leaves and I don't know. I'm thinking if it could be culling or something. I don't know, actually. I would probably need to actually sit down with you and take a look at it. If you want to, just drop me an email. It's just, Victor@quixel.com. Just drop me an email, and maybe we could set up a session where I can troubleshoot with you.
Mentoring by Victor. Hey man, gotta learn. And you're a good person to ask.
I hope so.
So, Gaming Punches wants to know, can you add 3D trees in Megascans? He's not good at software like Maya, Blender, etc. I think I can field that one real quick. The best way I would personally recommend, and if you want to chime in too, Victor, I would say would be to use SpeedTree. It is very, very easy to work with, very easy to learn, and the results are like just very easy to get. I mean, there's nothing difficult about the program, and the way the atlases that we have in our scan library work with SpeedTree is just it's a match made in heaven. That's how I prefer to work. But if you'd like to make trees by hand, maybe Victor could give you some pointers there too.
Yeah, I don't really make a lot of trees. I mean, dude, you saw how I made a tree for this. That is not the way. Yeah, it's
probably judging you.
I mean, yeah, I've always found it difficult to make trees by hand. It's I compare it to character art. But instead of 2 arms, there are like a ton of arms. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I am not the person to ask when it comes to trees. They're like my Achilles heel. Yeah, I'm afraid.
Damn, I guess we can't call you Victor Treeman then, can we?
You cannot.
Wow. Either way, the tree that you did put in there looks really good. And
Thank you. It's very, very hacky, very unoptimized, but I mean, I worked with what I have. So I mean, I took the tree we have in the library, and I made a bigger tree out of it with leaves.
You know, in aviation, there's a phrase that's called "any landing you can walk away from is a good landing." And in art, I think anything that looks good is good enough.
Anything that looks good and doesn't kill your frame rate is good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do we have anything else, or should I? Let's see. Yeah, I guess we could look a little bit more at the post processing.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah. So one thing that I like, the absolute first thing that I do for every single project that I make is I turn off the auto exposure, because that just throws me off so bad. Like if I want to change my exposure, like when on my camera, like I never use the auto mode. Like I adjust the ISO, I adjust the focal, everything, shutter and everything. So you know, since I do a lot of photography, it just really throws me off to have the camera just sort of adjusting to whatever I'm looking at, and it can really throw off the grading as well. So just turn that off unless it does your project or game a service. You know, if you have a lot of transitions between interior and exterior, nighttime, daytime, then absolutely, by all means, use it. But like if you're making something like this, just kill it altogether. Just turn it off, because it's going to make it a living nightmare to calibrate. You know, if, as I said, for a project like this, you should kill it, because it, like if I would rotate the sun ever so slightly to the left, it would just change the exposure completely, and you know my calibrations for the grading would be completely bonkers and everything. So yeah, just kill that. You can do that by in the settings, project settings, or you can just go in here, turn off the exposure compensation and the max and min EV 100 and stuff like that. I'm not sure if you agree. Like you're a real photography buff.
I am very much a real photography buff, so much so that I even use the same camera settings for my actual camera in Unreal.
So I'm assuming you turn off auto exposure as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I've found that Unreal hasn't actually gotten to the point yet that is, I mean, I love the engine, don't get me wrong, but it hasn't gotten to the point yet where I can actually put in the f-stop values and the ISO values and actually have them match up to real life.
Yes, that is actually something that I've wanted for a while. You know, in the lens settings, if I increase the like if I change the f-stop and the focal length and all that, like I think that should affect the exposure and like how much light is being let in and stuff. Like that would just make it so, you know, it would be an actual camera, you know, virtual camera. It'd be exactly. So cool.
And that's how aperture is supposed to work in real life.
Yeah.
When you the aperture up, which is ironically, or not ironically, but rather interestingly, the higher the aperture value, the lower the number. So yes. A number of like f3.2 means your camera aperture is huge, whereas an f22 value is super small.
Yeah.
And the smaller it is, the less light it comes in because it's a pinpoint.
Exactly. But with that said, though, I think the addition of the cinematic camera, gold. Like it would just revolutionize the quality of my renders and you know how I present my scenes. It just made everything look so much better. So
absolutely,
I'm so grateful they added that, and it just makes my life so much easier.
I haven't used anything else.
Same here. Like the first thing I do, turn off auto exposure, put in a cinematic camera, and I just pilot that. I never use the default camera. I don't even know how my scene looks without it. I guess I can check it out.
That's gonna be interesting.
No, don't. Yeah, cut that out. All right. So the next thing. So there are two things that I really like to add. It doesn't matter if it's sci-fi or fantasy or contemporary. One is chromatic aberration. Some people might go, no, but I go, yeah, go. So I like to set that to like 0.05 or 0.1, like a really low value, but you know, not enough to make it noticeable, but just enough so that, you know, it's there. Like it just adds a little bit of fringing to the camera. I think it just adds so much realism. And the second one is grain. I think it's under, yeah, here it is. I like to set that to between like 0.1 and 0.25, like a really low. low amount. And the same thing goes for vignetting. I have it to 0.1. Like you can see the difference it makes. It's very subtle, but like if you look here on the right side, it just helps ever so slightly to subconsciously guide the eye towards the center. If the lighting and the composition isn't enough, it's just like a visual aid. Like if I set it to 0.5, you can see what's going on. Like this really pushes the eye towards the center. So it can be a good aid, but it can also look very, very cheap and tacky if you rely on it too much. Like really, your composition and lighting should do that. You shouldn't really need the vignetting. You should more see the vignetting as a visual artifact of a physical camera, because pretty much all cameras have some vignetting, some more, some less. So yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it is now 4 minutes to close.
Okay.
But I think this next question should be the last thing we tackle because it's going to be the longest, and
Sure.
I think you should take your time with it. So one of our users would like to know if you have any tips to improve the overall artistic vision of, say, newcomers or even experienced artists to be able to see the scene in their whole head. And like I said, please take your time answering this. I think this is something that you and I should both chime in on because this is such a broad perspective.
So just to see if I got the question right. So how to sort of visualize the end result of a scene in the beginning?
I mean, pretty much, I would think so. Yeah, to take like the entire scene and just see it through from beginning to end in your own head, and then just kind of get to where you've gotten with what you've done.
Yes, so that is a very good question. I hope this answers the. I mean, I hope this is what you asked. But regardless, I think it's something that is worth bringing up, and it's something. I mean, I've been doing this. What is it? 12 years now, and it's still something that I can struggle with. You know, I can start something out with a very clear vision in my head, and I just start, and you know, a day in, I'm like, no, this isn't anything like what I envisioned at all. I don't see how it's gonna look the way I envision it to look. You know, it can be really devastating. But so one thing, I'm just trying to formulate myself and
take your time.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that comes with experience, and I guess something that I wish more people would have told me when I started out, was that I've noticed that, you know, in 95% of the cases when I feel like, darn, this is not gonna look the way I want it to. Like, I had this clear vision, but like in most cases, experience has shown me that it will look the way you envision if you just put in the hours. Like it is gonna look like crap once you just have, you know, block out and gray cubes and, you know, the default lighting and stuff. But like just keep working on it, and it will turn out the way you intend to. Like, don't get beaten down early on. Like, I know it can be really stressful, especially, you know, if you know you're a freelancer or you have a gig or something, and like you have this project you have to do, and it's just like you can't see it. But so one thing that can help with that is also something that I mentioned in the video. You know, all like keep taking screenshots of your scene, you know, so you can go back and take a look at like how it has progressed, you know, from day one to where you are now. Like if it doesn't help with anything else, it at least helps you show the progress you've made from day one till, you know, where you are right now. And the second thing that really helps is having very, very, very many reference photos and images and pieces of, you know, concept art and photos and mood paintings and, you know, anything, like, because it's something that I notice a lot of people struggle with. You know, they just want to jump into making and creating, but like that is like a Hollywood movie, you know, production team just jumping straight into production without doing any pre-production. Like every single project has a period of pre-production, no matter how small it is. You know, if you're gonna mop your floor, you have the pre-production of thinking like, okay, so where is my mop, and where is my can, or like everything has a period of pre-production, and making an environment is no different. You have to first of all obviously have the idea. Once you have the idea, gather your references. Do collages. Like you could group different references together, by color, by different styles, because it's always like whenever when I actually got stuck in this project for a while, or not stuck, but like I came to a point where I was like, yeah, I mean, I like the colors, I like the composition, but it's just not looking the way I wanted it to look. So I did another pass of reference collecting. I'd mainly been looking at screenshots and references from the real world, fan art. But once I started looking at the movie, the Warcraft movie, that really gave me so much more material to work with, so that it just loosened everything up. Like I knew exactly where I was gonna go. It's like and it's such a small thing. By just expanding my reference library, it just revolutionized the way I worked on the scene. So yeah, that is absolutely key to any project. And that is reference, photos, observing and looking, because I mean you are going to be able to create the scene. It's just a matter of like seeing, like compare what you're doing to what you want to do. So like and you have to be able to look at your project critically. Like if you look at your scene and compare it to the reference, like, or the concept, and you're thinking, this is not looking good, then change what you're doing. Look at the reference. What are the differences? What is it that really makes the reference look good, and what is it that makes your scene look bad? This is such a high level thing, high level question, and it's so tricky to answer. Like this is one of those things, you sit down and talk about for hours, over a cup of coffee. So I really hope it makes sense. And I guess the point of the whole thing is like reference, block out, and take a step back and look at your scene, and track your progress, do before and afters, and just don't give up. Because for most of my scenes look pretty crap until the last 20%. Like it's pretty, I'm going like, man, this is not looking good. And then I hit a point, like I just keep at it. I just keep working on it, following those references. And then one day I'm like, yes, there we go. Now I have it. And I'm noticing it's like that point is coming quicker and quicker and quicker the more experience I get, and the more time I spend making environments. So yeah, I mean, keep at it, expand your reference library, observe the world, stay critical, be really critical about your own work. Like don't be afraid of like just taking a step back. You can spend a day on something. If it doesn't look good at the end of the day, like don't fall victim to the, was it straw man fallacy, or no, it's not straw man, sunken cost fallacy. Like just because you spend time on something doesn't mean you have to keep it. Like if it doesn't look good, just redo it or throw it away. Don't keep it just because you spent 7 hours or 8 hours on it. Yeah. So I hope that answered your question, and sorry if I went on a tangent or a rant there.
That's okay. For those of you wondering, the straw man fallacy is when you argue against something someone else did not argue.
Yeah, and I meant and by sunken cost fallacy, which was the fallacy that I was intending to go for, is when the whole thing, just because you've sunk in so much time or money into something, like that doesn't mean it is worth more. Like it can be absolutely worthless, but like you see a value, like you want to keep it just because, oh, but I worked on this for 2 days, like I can't throw it away. Yeah, I mean, kill your darlings.
You see that with gambling a lot too. That's often where the sunken comes in.
Exactly.
One thing I wanted to chime in here as we wrap up, get ready to move on. Aside from the phenomenal work done here, it should be noted for everybody that what you've seen here is something everybody can do.
Absolutely.
Everything that Wiktor has done, everything that I've made, everything that all of our artists at Quixel have made is something everyone can do with enough
Yeah.
time and practice. And practice is everything.
Yeah.
Wiktor, how many years of experience do you have with Unreal Engine?
With Unreal since 2009, so 10 years.
So about the same as me. I started working with Unreal 2008, 2009 when I was in college.
Yeah,
And
same.
even UE4, it was UDK.
Yeah.
And, I started learning from my teachers.
Mhm.
Big shout out to Celeste, who helped me get through everything I got through.
Shout out to
And
Celeste.
yeah, she was a great teacher. I wouldn't have learned what I know now without her help. And you learn from other people. You grow from working with other people and having them teach you and you teaching them. And I can't stress enough that if you know something, that you should share it with other people, because the more you teach and the more you learn, the more you actually hold on to that information. The more you help other people with what you're trying to learn yourself, the easier it becomes for you. And again, as I've said just a minute ago, if we can do this work, you guys can too. It's all about time and about vision. Everybody has the potential to do this. Every bit of art that you make is all about time and patience. Nobody draws a perfect drawing straight off the bat unless you're like some crazy, insanely talented person with just the ability to see something and visualize it immediately. I mean, when I drew, I had this rough sketch and then I would fill in forms. It's exactly how you work here too, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, we're doing our best, like we're making these live streams and these tutorials for you guys. I mean, we really want to help, shorten the learning process for you guys. And so, I mean, just if you have feedback, if you have suggestions or requests, just send them in, and we'll try and cover it for you. Yeah, what you guys are making, like I just have to do a really small shout out. Like seeing what you guys have been making lately is just mind-boggling. It's so good. Like you guys are absolutely amazing.
You're talking about the art community, right?
Yeah, the art community, exactly. The Quixel art community on Facebook. It's just so good. Like I'm mind blown every single day, and like you guys really inspire me. To keep working, keep getting better. So yeah, huge shout out to the community and the artists out there.
Because at the end of the day, we're doing this for you guys because we're a community of artists and we love making art and we love making everybody's lives easier. The last thing I want to really say though, don't give up, guys. Just because it doesn't look great now doesn't mean it can't look great later. Every bit of art can be improved. Every artist can be the best artist possible with the work and the practice put into their art. Again, Wiktor, thanks so much for taking the time to demonstrate this. This is probably one of the best streams we've had. I can't even think of the last time we've done a 2-hour stream except for that train scene that I did 3 years ago.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was just enough to fit everything in that I wanted. So yeah, we had a lot to cover. Yeah, I mean, it was fun. It's always fun. One day I'm gonna sit there and watching the questions instead of talking for 2 hours, because I want to see what you guys are saying in real time. You seem to have such a fun time there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So should we wrap it up and thank the guys?
Yep. So again, thanks to everybody. I put a link in chat for the art community, which is facebook.com/groups/Quixel Tools Group. It used to be called Tools Group. It is now called Art Community. That will take you directly to it. Please join, talk, share your work. We love seeing what you make, and ask for any advice if you want to know how to work with stuff. If you need help with materials, I've taken my own personal materials and shared them with people just because why not? There's nothing that I have that I haven't learned from someone else, and nothing that you have that you haven't learned from someone else. So that being said, I think we're going to sign off. Again, Wiktor, thank you so much for taking the time out. 2 hours is exceptional. It takes a lot out of people. I know I'm a little tired. I know you're probably definitely tired of talking by this point. You guys are such a great community. Thank you for tuning in and for all the questions. And we cannot wait to see you guys again next Friday.
Yeah, can't wait. And thank you all so much for watching. And I'll see you next time.
Yep. See you later, guys. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.